welcome back to another episode of Armstrong. We're picking up exactly right where we left off in the previous episode, working on the downtown area. So you've only seen part one of the downtown, and you're wondering why there's like zero real introduction here. That's why, because I'm picking up exactly kind of where I left off. So much of this video is probably going to be a bit more a montage, because I spoke quite a lot about sort of overall idea of what I was doing here in the previous video. But most of this video is going to be sort of working on the second half of downtown, which is mostly stuff that's sort of to the closer to the lakefront compared to the main road that sort of cuts through the middle of the city. Now, in reality, it's kind of odd to start building a city with essentially sort of downtown, very strongly urban area, right? So you end up with a sort of high-rise, multi-story buildings and then just flat, empty land around it, which looks strange. The idea that I kind of had, though, was that the whole idea of Armstrong is it's kind of this meant to be kind of a sort of very showy city and demonstrating its wealth and planning and its sort of tech capabilities and things like this. So my thinking was that it seems kind of likely that you'd sort of start off with building this downtown area, so essentially you could show off, right? This is the part of the downtown where you're making your mark and you're making your statement, I guess, to the wider world about what Armstrong's kind of going to be. So as a result, I kind of wanted to make sure that a couple of things happened. Most of the buildings are very modern looking and very new looking because they should be. They're being built right now. And second of all, I kind of wanted to have quite a diverse feel to it. So not every single apartment building is being, built by the same people, right? They're all different developers who are coming in and building different styles of buildings with different unique features or architectural designs and things like this. So everything's very modern, but it has a very diverse kind of range of buildings within these different blocks. I think in my head as well, because of this whole idea of this city, was you have a sort of corporate, modern, tech-driven, Silicon Valley kind of feel. I think in my head as well, a lot of these buildings are probably sponsored and named after the companies that built them, right? So a lot of developing companies are probably putting fairly substantial logos in these buildings to be, this is our building that we built and designed, so you can kind of show off. Because really, the whole purpose of this city in a lot of ways is to be a brochure for the companies and corporations that are kind of based here. One of the things I was really determined to try and do with this whole downtown area, and I think I managed to pull it off successfully, was making sure that none of the buildings were crazy high. I wanted the buildings to have height because that height gave them presence and architectural purpose and allowed them to be flashy. But I didn't want them to be high because of a sort of, oh my god, land value is so expensive that we have to build up because building sideways is impossible, because the land here in theory is pretty cheap. So you want that height to come about because you want to build high rather than you have to build high. So as a result, none of the buildings here are kind of crazy high. We do have some that are like, several stories, but we haven't got any like genuine skyscrapers here, right? There's no buildings that are like 30, 40 stories tall. I think the tallest residential buildings maybe like 11, 12 floors or something like that. I think that works pretty successfully for how I kind of wanted it all to look. You can see here one of the things I kind of really wanted to do was give this old farm road a slightly different feel compared to some of the other roads around it. I wanted it to be more than just going at an angle, and that does stand out by that alone, but I also like the idea of it looking slightly different. I didn't want to turn it into another 6-lane road. So the sort of compromise I kind of came to was I found this road that was basically a road with a bike lane attached. I think that adds a unique feel to it without being completely, making it too grand or too wide. I was also really pleased with how this particular building can turn out, and it's just one asset that's been placed, but it's such a strange looking residential building. But I think it looks really nice right there on the corner of this road, and I kind of didn't want it to be blocked by the things around it. So I ended up building this park just opposite between it and the main road. I think it creates this really nice sort of standout, eye-catching sight as you're sort of driving by on that road, to have this sort of very strange looking architectural building overlooking the main road. This building was probably the biggest pain of everything here to build. It took me a long time to figure out how to kind of cope with this very steep hill and how to sort of work around that. I want to apologize in advance as well, that I feel like there's a lot of jump cuts happening here and a lot of very sharp camera movements. That's something I'll try and get better with going forward in terms of how I'm recording these, to account for what it's going to look like once it's sped up. But I kind of had to zoom around an awful lot to kind of figure out how this little section here was going to work and check the angles and things like that. It took me a lot of time to get this little section right. And I've actually cut out a few bits that were me fiddling with pathways because it took forever. But I actually think the end result of this complex here looks kind of cool, with a sort of multi-layered building that kind of goes down the slope. And you'll see later on at the end, I've got some cinematics in the end, and you'll see how this building kind of looks once you look from the lake. It really stands out, and I think it looks gorgeous as sort of part of the skyline. So as we dive more into the commercial section again, that's at this end of the downtown area, I downloaded and bought this pack of city center assets that are part of City Skylines DLC. I think they work really nicely actually for this kind of project, where you can kind of place them into these blocks and you get this very nice, grand commercial city center feel that I think really works. So I was really pleased with how this little section turned out actually, given that I was just sort of using simple DLC assets. I decided that I really wanted to have some kind of substantial civil building in the middle of this downtown area. I originally sort of looked at trying to place some kind of sort of government style building, but that didn't really work. It didn't feel right. It didn't seem to have the right feel to it. So I ended up placing the library here, and we have this sort of grand library. And I think it looks really nice actually, sort of positioned right on the main street like this. and acts as a sort of good divider as well between the commercial aspects and the more residential aspects. So we're kind of reaching the end of the montage here, and you can see here this is a few cinematics just to kind of give you a feel for how downtown now looks now that we've completed it. So we've got this is just downtown opposite the library. You can see the library on the right hand side there, and this quite tall commercial building on the left. I really loved how some of these areas turned out with little touches like the bench with the tree there. It looks gorgeous in my opinion. This is down by the lakeside. I built this a little bit off camera, but I really love how this looks with the lakeside, and you kind of got the restaurants just by the lake, so if you want to sit out by the bakery and sit there you can. I love how those buildings look in the background, overlooking the city. This is that park opposite that very strange pyramid looking building. It's not especially particularly beautiful park, but as I say, I really like how that park juxtaposed by the main road. And you can see here, this is that parallel road, Old Farm Road, that cuts diagonally across the city as a sort of memento of where the city came from. Here's a view of sort of downtown commercial district, just with people passing by. I really liked how some of these buildings turned out, and I think they really look the part in this part of town. This is probably the thing I'm most pleased with, is how the transition feels between these very, very big commercial buildings to sort of lighter, low-rise residential buildings. As you can see here, as we sort of pan across, the height of the buildings feels quite natural. As it slowly gets more sparse and smaller, and more trees and things like that, I think that really works. So yeah, that's pretty much all I've got for this video. Now we've completed downtown. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please leave any comments you've got. I'll try and improve the quality of my videos as I go on, and hopefully we can get more going forward. So in the next video, what we're going to be doing is moving away from this downtown area, because now we've got a city. It can obviously could live off the national grid, but that doesn't feel right. I feel like if you're going to have a city that's going to make a statement, it should make that statement proper and have its own power source. We're going to be building a power station around about here in the city, across the other side from the lake. I'll talk more about the design for that power station in the next video, and I will see you then.